It's the beginning of the year, so I feel like a lot of us are trying to plan for the year ahead and try to make 2024 the best year possible. But in order to really make these plans in the most intentional way possible to really help you be successful, I feel like you have to set goals to be able to give you the right direction. I've always been a really big goal setting person. Even when I was little, I've always just been inclined to set goals for myself, especially at the beginning of the year. So I've learned a lot along the way about how to set goals that I'll actually achieve and the kind of goals that just end up discouraging you and making you want to give up on them. Because I feel like goal setting can go one of two ways. It can help you be very proactive, or it can just make you feel overwhelmed and discouraged. So especially going into this year, I wanted to be really intentional about my goal setting. Last year was kind of a lot. I feel like there was a lot going on. It was more of my throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks kind of year. A little bit chaotic. So I wanted to be a little more intentional and focused in the things that I'm setting goals around this year. So I kind of want to share my process about how I go through prepping and actually setting these goals to make sure that I'm setting myself up for something that's achievable. And I just made a new full Notion Life template, and goal setting is a part of that. So I'm also going to kind of show you how that works at the end of this if you feel inspired to use that. So I've already done all this goal setting for the year, so I'm just going to kind of walk you through this process, not sharing all of my goals necessarily. I think it's important to keep some things to yourself, but just kind of sharing my process so that you can follow it too. So step 0, before you even get to the first step, is just setting the scene to make sure that you're in the right mindset to be able to do all of this really strategic and inward-looking work. I went to a coffee shop for the first part of this and then ended up going home for the second part, but you can choose wherever is going to make you feel most comfortable. If that's a co-working space, setting up your office to be really cozy, going to a coffee shop, sitting in a park, anywhere that you feel like you're just going to be most inspired. I would probably not recommend doing this in your bed. I personally only really like to go in my bedroom at the end of the night to just kind of keep things separate from relaxation and productivity. But if that's the best place for you and you feel most productive there, by all means, you can do this in your bed. I also love to have really good music in the background. Obviously, nothing with words. I feel like words are going to muddy up your thoughts and everything, but just some nice instrumental music. I have been a huge fan for the past year of Jazz in the Background, this playlist on Spotify. We have a speaker in our living room, so I just play it throughout the whole house and it just kind of chills me out. So I just put on my noise canceling headphones when I was at the coffee shop and threw this playlist on and just kind of got me in the chill zone and ready to go. You can also light a candle too if that's going to give you more of that full sensory experience. Okay, so step number 1 is you're going to want to, before you're focusing on 2024, you want to reflect on everything that happened in 2023. I'm going to put some questions on the screen that I used in my reflection. You can feel free to take some of them, add your own, use all of them. All these are just kind of guidelines to help you look back on 2023 to be able to look forward in 2024. So basically, you want to find, first of all, what didn't work in 2023 so you know what to change going into the next year. This is a really good way to identify problem areas that you have to work on, places where you didn't reach your goals. Maybe you set the goals last year and didn't reach them. So this can help you identify some reasons potentially why you didn't reach those goals. But you can also use this to see what did go well. And if there were some things that really took off, for me, this year is when I started freelancing and I was really, really successful with that. So being able to reflect on the success I did have this year helped me see that this is something I want to continue to focus on going into the next year, and drawing off of what I did well in building this freelance career will help me set more action items for the next year. This also just kind of gets you in the mindset. Anytime you look back, I feel like I get a huge burst of inspiration. Part of it is things you wish you would have done last year, even if it's unrelated to things you did good or bad. It just kind of gets you thinking in this what if mindset, and we can channel that what if to be productive in this situation by applying it to how we're going to approach the next year. So I feel like it's just pretty inspirational when you're doing this reflection, and you get so many more ideas that you wouldn't necessarily have if you just decided to jump right into goal setting before reflecting. You can do this in a variety of places. I like to do the app day one. That's where I've been trying to get back into the habit of journaling over the last few months. I think it's helpful to do it in a digital way though, because it's easier to look back at this later versus trying to keep track of this one piece of paper that you wrote on a year ago. But if you're really a pen and paper person and things sink in a lot more when you write them on pen and paper physically, then feel free to put it on paper. The next one is I just do a massive brain dump of any ideas that came up during this reflection and just when you're thinking about goal setting in general. This is not a time to be organized or anything. Just throw everything down at once and don't feel compelled to make any interpretations. If you write something down and you think it's kind of stupid, don't feel obligated to erase it and not keep it there. Just anything in your brain that comes to mind when you think of goal setting for 2024, throw it down on there. This could be anything big or small. So let's say you want to try a new vitamin. Put that down there even though it's super small. That could be right next to something that says that you want to go back to school and get your PhD. Any of these things, there's no rhyme or reason. Just throw them down and let yourself dream big too. Even if you put something down and you think, I might not have time or energy or whatever to focus on this in 2024, just put it down anyways, because putting that down might spark another idea, which would spark another idea that can lead you to something that is actually going to end up on your goal list. So allowing yourself to go on these little tangents can be super, super beneficial. And the more that you go down these little rabbit holes, you might discover things you never even thought of. Like a new goal that wasn't even on your radar until another idea sparked that idea inside of you. Again, the method here isn't as important. I like to do it on my iPad because, again, I like to have a digital record of it versus having to keep track of a paper. But the iPad helps me still write it down physically. And I think that's really important with this messiness. If I had to write everything out on a list on a Word doc, I feel like I wouldn't be as free-flowing with my thoughts as I need to be to make this as productive as possible. This year, I did it on the GoodNotes app, but looking back, I kind of wish that I would have switched to the Freeform app. I've talked about this in my podcast before, but it's one of my favorite apps on the iPad. It's a native iPad app, and it's just like a massive canvas. You can keep scrolling out as far as you want, so you're not going to hit any of those blocks when you have to switch to another page. This one just lets you have one massive page. I think it helps you to think a lot clearly. When you have the confines of a page, I feel like it makes your thoughts feel a little bit confined too. So although I didn't do this year, this is something that I definitely would recommend and I'm going to change next year when I do it. Next thing, when you're all done with your brain dump, go through and highlight any big themes you see or highlight any specific things that stuck out to you that you wanted to set as a specific goal. So this is where you're kind of reining it in a little bit. It's still part of the brain dump section, so don't feel compelled to be really, really selective with everything that you highlight and that it all has to go on your goals. But this is just kind of where you take this massive list of things that you created and just reel it in a little bit and make it a littler list that you can then use to set your goals. And then once you have all of those thoughts out of your head, we're actually going to kind of take a step back first. Before we get into more granular goal setting, we're going to further get in that mindset. After you've reflected on all of your goals, doing that massive brain dump, you kind of have a good idea of what you want your overall life to look like in 2024 or the next year if you're watching this in the future. But you kind of have a good idea for the general vibe of your life. So now this is where I really like to create a vision board. Vision boards that work can look different from one person to the next. Some people like having very, very specific things on their vision board. Some people like a lot of words. Some people like more of just a general vibe of like the textures of their life. So if one person wants to make a lot of money this year, some people might put a computer and other office-y type things to represent them really investing in their business. Other people might put more of the outcomes of making a lot of money, so showing more luxurious things, and there's not really a good or bad way to do it. Just think of what you need to motivate yourself best. I kind of like to take a hybrid approach. I like to do some general vibe things to just kind of show what these outcomes will look like, and then also sprinkle in a little bit of the more tactical things of like the actions I'm going to take to be able to achieve that vibe. So I'll put my vision board on the screen here. This is what it looked like this year. So this one is definitely more vibe leaning, I think. And here's one that I made a few months ago. I don't just do vision boards at the beginning of the year. I like to do them throughout the year as well. So this one has a little bit more tactical stuff on it. And I think it just kind of varies from month to month and what you're feeling. So try it out, see what feels good. And if something doesn't feel good, feel free to reapproach it, start a new one, or just deleting a few things and playing around with it. The whole vibe of this is just like what's going to motivate you most and keep you most focused for you to see it. So I am an Adobe Suite person, so I used Adobe Express for this, but you can also use Canva. That's a really, really popular one. There's another website that is specifically a vision board website. I cannot think of the name of it right now, but when I think of it, I'll put the name on the screen. That's a really, really good place for vision boards too, if you want to use their internal database of pictures. I have used that before for vision boards and it's really good. I don't think there's one software that's necessarily better than other softwares. It's just kind of personal preference. You could also do this by cutting out physical pictures from magazines or printing out pictures and making this physically if that's helpful for you. As far as where to find the pictures for it, Pinterest is a super obvious choice for that. You can look through things you have pinned recently, or you can search for specific ideas and themes that came up on your brain dump and see what pictures pop up for those. Okay, this next piece is where it's going to get a little more tactical. This is when we're really gonna get into the meaty part of goal setting. So this step is figuring out how to structure your goals. There are so many different ways that you can structure your goals. Depending on the person, depending on the specific nature of the goal, it could totally vary. One idea that I had recently heard about in the last couple of months was the idea of output versus input-based goals. Output is basically like, I want to make $10,000. An input goal would be all of those little things you do to actually make $10,000. So it would be applying for X amount of jobs on Upwork and updating your resume, posting 5 times a week on LinkedIn, anything like that. Those input-based goals are going to be a lot more psychologically fulfilling because sometimes for output-based goals, there are a lot of things that are completely outside of your control that no matter how hard you work to reach that goal, there's a possibility that you can't reach it by the end of the year for something that just is not in your control. With input-based goals, you're able to ensure that if you are dedicated to those goals, they are 100% achievable because it's something that is based on an action that you're doing. The goal is to do these actions. So I feel like there's a time and a place for both of those. Once I heard about input-based goals, I was like, oh, I feel like that's how I want to set goals now. But then I took a step back and thought, that doesn't really leave any room for dreaming. It doesn't really leave any room for saying what those inputs are going to lead to. So that's why the system that I use is kind of a hybrid of the two, where the goals themselves are more of the output-based goals, and then the action items within those are the input-based things that contribute to it. So that's something that works for me. And because of that, the way that I structure my goals are a little bit broader. So I like to use I statements. For example, one of my goals is I have a thriving freelance business. So that is basically as broad as you can go. So that's why in this goal setting template that I have in Notion, I have all of these questions underneath it that I'll put them on the screen here that walk you through thinking through this goal and what it actually looks like to give it a little bit more texture. For me, these broader I statements work because a lot of my goals are bigger projects. Like I have, one of them is related to career, one of them is related to finances, one of them is related to physical health, and one is related to mental health. They typically are something like that because these are places I want to focus on in my life all year. That just works for me to be able to separate them like that. So I'll give you an example of how this can look different. So let's say one of my goals is I want to feel confident and strong in my body. And there's a lot of things that go into that, like getting into a exercise routine and exercising X amount of times per month, working on having a gluten-free diet, getting enough sleep. All of these things go into that goal, but some people might not want to be so broadly focused in that. They might want to specifically focus on losing weight. So I feel like that's where it differs. If you do have very, very specific goals you want to go after, then maybe these broader ones wouldn't work. I think a lot of this leads into what motivates you. Some people are motivated by specificity, and some people are motivated by having bigger goals. I'm a bigger goal kind of person. That's what motivates me, but that doesn't mean that everyone is necessarily the same way. But the point here, and everything that I'm saying right now and kind of rambling about, is just picking how you want to structure your goals. I think bare bones, in the simplest words, the best way to structure your goals is to have a big goal and then break it down into action items. So step 5 is putting it in a system that you can rely upon. So putting it in a system is not just a place to record it and not look at it ever again. Even if this is just written on a piece of paper, even if this is in a Google Doc, you want to be able to set a system to be able to go back and look at these on a periodic basis to make sure that you're making actions to reaching your goals. At the most basic level, this could be setting a recurring reminder on your calendar that once a month you have to look at these goals. And it's just a reminder to be able to pull up that Google Doc or pull out this piece of paper. But if you want to get a little more sophisticated with this, that's where something like the system that I created in Notion comes into play. So I have this goal setting dashboard that is a part of my bigger life dashboard. It's also part of my content creator dashboard if you want it to be more specific just to your business, but I like using it as part of my whole life system. So basically, all of these will integrate with my weekly and monthly dashboards that I have there. So that all of these goals that are set to associate with a certain quarter or month will always show up on those months. So that's the way that I like to make sure that I'm constantly reassessing these goals, is that they're front and center every single month when I go through that dashboard, so that I can look at all the action items that I have to do for that and distribute them accordingly. So like I said before, when I create a goal on here, I created this template that gives me all of these orienting questions. These are especially helpful if you are setting these broader I statement goals or just broader goals in general, to be able to add some legs to this goal and to be able to say, what does this actually look like? What challenges are you anticipating facing with this? And how do you plan to overcome these challenges? So this just makes you get a lot more specific and a lot more real with yourself about what conquering this goal is actually going to look like. And then after anticipating those challenges and how you're going to overcome that, usually in that reflection, a couple of action items come up for you. So let's go back to the freelance example to talk about how you can use these reflections to find your action items. So let's say one of the challenges that I anticipated is that a lot of companies are tightening their budgets and it's going to be harder to find new clients. Then in how I'm going to tackle these challenges, maybe I said that I'm going to be more intentional about going to networking events. I'm going to leverage freelance networks like Upwork more than I have in the past. And I'm going to build my personal brand by posting a lot more on LinkedIn, so I can hopefully get some organic leads that way. So then I can use those if those are things that I specifically need to do to be able to overcome challenges associated with my goals. Then I put those down and I put a number to them. And there can be other things too that are not directly associated with challenges, just kind of things you have to do. Like let's say in order to be able to really invest in this, you need to update your website, or you need to get new headshots, or you want to look into a new software that's going to streamline your accounting process. So these are the perfect things that are very, very tactical. These are the input-based goals that will be your action items. Another action item you can have is if you're setting broader goals, this is where you can maybe include some of those more specific goals. So if I want to make X amount of dollars, then I can put that down as a goal. Or if you want to get X clients, this is where I get more specific in all of my goals. And then you want to consider the timing of these goals. There are going to be some goals that generally are just throughout the whole year. A lot of this has to do with habits. So if one of your goals is to just live a healthier lifestyle, that is probably going to be a year-long thing, but the tasks within there might be year-long or have a specific month you can focus on them in. So using the example of having a healthier lifestyle, you might have a habit that you want to create, that you want to work out 4 times per week. That would be a year-long goal, because it's not like you only want to work out 4 times per week for the first quarter. Unless you are working out that amount of times just to be able to run a marathon or reach your goal weight or something. But a lot of times with those habits, those are going to be year-long. But within that, there can be time-specific ones too. So let's say in the first quarter, you want to run a marathon. Then I would put that action item, I would put the months associated with that as January, February, March, because you're working on that all throughout that first quarter. So you want that action item to show up on anything associated with those months, if that makes sense. So there are going to be some action items you're working on throughout the whole year. There are going to be some that you're only working on for certain months or certain quarters. But those are all nested within the bigger goal. That big goal, although there might be some action items that are more specific, the bigger goal might be year long. So I like to have certain quarters dedicated to certain things that I want to really focus on building my business, a strong foundation for my business in the first quarter. And then the second quarter, I want to focus on something else. And maybe I don't have a specific focus for the third quarter. And then there's something else that I want to focus on for the fourth quarter. And then I have 2 goals that are just year long. So you don't have to get as granular with this. I think that it sounds a little bit confusing until you actually get into using it. But to me, the purpose of assigning quarters for the goals and months for the action items is just so they automatically pop up on these quarterly and monthly dashboards. So I can just kind of see what's on the radar on the broader level of the goals and on the more granular level of the action items that you have to actually either accomplish or work on accomplishing during that time. So in my system, I'll walk you through kind of what this looks like with just some examples, not my actual goals here. But once you're done putting in, with this example, we have 4 goals that we're focusing on, and each of them have several action items below them. You can see the full list there of all of the goals and their associated action items and the time period we got to focus on them. And that leads into step 6 that I kind of hinted at before, but this is just reviewing it. A lot of goals, I feel like people stop at step 5. They will think of their goals, they'll think of how they have to achieve them, they'll write them down, maybe even put them in a system like this, and then never revisit them again. It's so important. Goals are not going to work for you. And quite honestly, sometimes you'll set a goal, and I've done this before, that I'll set a goal at the beginning of the year, and then I realized I didn't look back at my goals at all throughout the whole year. And I was like, I forgot that was one of my goals. And even if it's something completely achievable, I just totally forgot about it. So I didn't even focus on it. So I think just reminding yourself of these goals, and a level deeper than that, reminding yourself of what the action items you told yourself you needed to do to be able to reach these goals. This is super, super important for making any progress. But doing this review also gives you an opportunity to be a little bit more flexible. Let's say that the first quarter is about to end, and you look at your goals and you see that in the second quarter, there was something else that you really need to focus on, but this quarter didn't go as you planned. So what you focused on in the first quarter is still going to have to be your focus in the next couple months going forward. Being able to identify that this conflict is happening can help you adapt and be flexible to what's happening in your everyday life. As much as we would love to say we're setting all these goals at the beginning of the year, everything is going to go perfectly, and we're going to be able to focus on these in the time that we set, a lot of times it's not the case, and life gets in the way. So this is not meant to be something that is hard-coded into a system. These are estimates and reminders and everything that you wanted to set for yourself, but you also have to acknowledge the fact that you're human. So swap things out if you need to. There might be some goals that you pare them down a little bit as you get through the year and realize that I'm actually needing to spend a lot more time on this, whether it's because it's harder than you anticipated or it went better than you anticipated, so you really, really want to invest your energy into that. just being able to go back and visit these goals gives you that opportunity to be more intentional instead of just blindly following all of these goals that you set for yourself at the beginning of the year. Because to be honest, some of them are going to be a little bit arbitrary. We always set tons and tons of goals, and some of them might have like not been something that's actually going to move the needle on our life. I think these reviews can help to kind of naturally weed out some of those ones that maybe shouldn't be a priority right now, and other things can take the front seat in front of them. So that is my full goal setting process and system. I hope it really helped. I'm feeling really, really inspired this year to be able to reach these goals. I feel like this is the most intentional about goal setting I've ever been. Like I said, I've always been a goal girl, but I have been, especially in the last year, getting really, really into maximizing my productivity while minimizing stress. And I think that goal setting is a really, really great opportunity to be able to put this knowledge actually in practice. So if you want to use this goal setting template, it's up on both my Gumroad and my Etsy. If you want to download it, there's the content creator dashboard. If you want to just use that for your creative business and just do the goal setting as a part of that. But I also have my full Notion life system. It's only $2 more. And it just gives you every single thing that you need in your life to be able to keep you organized and to be able to keep everything centralized. You're not having to scatter around and do a million different things. This is actually the first year that I'm doing my full planning system in Notion instead of doing it as a combination between Notion and GoodNotes. So that's actually why I originally built this out, is so that I could have it for myself and have a really, really reliable thing that gave me just enough functionality, but without having too much where it's going to overwhelm me, because there's definitely a lot of Notion systems like that. So this was custom built for my needs, but I wanted to share it with everyone else because I'm super proud of it and have been testing it for the last little bit, and it's super helpful. So if you want to not only get some help with goal setting, but also just getting the rest of your life together, I hope that this template will be really helpful for you. So thanks for tuning in, and good luck with your goal setting for 2024, and I'll see you in the next video.